continuing our reading of Romeo and Juliet, we're going to be able to discover some literary devices within the texts. There's a lot, and they're very important to being able to understand what Shakespeare is talking about. It's helpful to know what those literary devices mean when trying to decipher his Shakespearean language. So just to get our minds thinking about literary devices, I have a YouTube video kind of showing you certain literary devices in things that we hear every day, songs that we hear every day, movies that we've seen, just to kind of show examples of these literary devices so that you can get your mind thinking about literary devices for Shakespeare. Is the sound going to work?
Turn the speakers on.
Turn the speakers on.
Up.
Jump up in the main fucking road. Used to care, used to share. The love that she used to give me can't be found. I lost my bed, she said she'd stay. And lately I'm sleeping with a girl. My stock is down and out. I used to be with my baby girl. That was before. Like that boom boom proud. Them chickens jacking my style. They try to copy my swagger. I'm on that next now. 3,000
to get you thinking about literary devices, obviously we see them every day. They're in songs that we hear on the radio, they're in movies that we watch. So there are 5 specific literary devices that we are going to be focusing on today because these are the most frequent within what we're reading, Romeo and Juliet. Each of you has one of these 5 written on the note card in front of you. These will help us break up into groups later, but just to get you thinking about a certain literary device and what you just saw and what we'll be learning about right now. To start with, we have symbolism, which the definition of symbolism is the representation of something with the use of a symbol. So an example of this from To Kill a Mockingbird is the mockingbird is a symbol for Tom Robinson. So when they say in the story that it is wrong to kill a mockingbird, that is symbolizing Tom Robinson, that it is wrong to kill him for a crime that he did not commit. The next that we'll be focusing on is imagery. This is a figurative image used to represent something real within literature. An example of imagery from Fahrenheit 451 is just from the beginning. There's so much imagery within that book, but in the beginning of the story, there's a quote saying, "It was a special pleasure to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed." This is referring to the fire, and saying that things were eaten is imagery because they were not actually eaten, they were burned and ruined. Next, we have metaphor, which is a figure of speech in which a term or phrase is used to describe something that is not literally applicable to. So an example of a metaphor, also from To Kill a Mockingbird, is I tried to climb into Jen's skin and walk around in it. This is clearly a metaphor because Scott could not actually climb into Jen's skin and see what he is thinking because he just wants to get into his mind. It's a metaphor for wanting to get into his mind and see what he's thinking. And then next we have paradox, which is something that is self-contradictory but actually makes sense. So a famous paradox within Macbeth is fair is foul and foul is fair. These two things are obviously they're not alike, but saying in this way makes them make sense, which makes it a paradox. And foreshadowing